Thank you. All right, welcome. Welcome to all of y'all for braving the, in fact, right before I walked out here about 10 minutes ago now, I get little weather notices from the Weather Channel. It was saying freezing rain was about to start and would continue for the next however many hours or whatever. But so I'm thankful for y'all for braving the weather and being here. And welcome to all of you out there online who are joining us. That I can't say as I blame you that you're not here with the weather. But I just appreciate everyone tuning in, because the single most important thing. And the bishop even sent out a letter earlier today, and I have to absolutely echo the thrust of his comments. We live in a world that is spiraling away from the truth. It's spiraling away from Christ. It's spiraling away from the scriptures and biblical morality. And the only way that we as Christians can truly be Christians, because we live in the middle of a hurricane of disinformation. We live in this world where all around us is this constant series of lies. It's all designed towards building up, different perverse and ungodly agendas and everything like that. And what the bishop was pointing out most directly, and I couldn't agree with him more, is the fact that we need to know the scriptures. We have to spend time in the scriptures, and that's the beauty of what we do here on Wednesday nights. But I hope and pray that everyone is doing that every day. Take at least, you can give up at least a half an hour or something and read, spend time in the book, spend time in God's word. Because if we have to know his word to really be able to communicate his word. And we're the only ones who are going to try to tell the truth in this world, because no one else is going to. They're all interested in whatever their agendas are. And to that end, I'm going to just a couple of things. I keep telling y'all, and I will always tell you, different signs and different things that are concerning about the final season that I believe we're in, leading up to however long it is from now, leading up to the beginning of what we're studying in Revelation. But most notably this week, this was an article, part of this was an article I pulled off the internet, so I don't know if it was signed this week or last week, but the new president signed an executive order promoting homosexuality and transgenderism as one of the centerpieces of the United States foreign policy around the world. And it directs that all U.S. government departments and agencies engaged abroad to ensure that U.S. diplomacy and foreign assistance promote and protect the rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex, whatever the heck that is, persons around the world. No mention in there of protecting religion, or protecting races, or protecting no. We're going to focus the weight of the United States foreign policy on a very sick and ungodly movement that is designed to destroy the very fabric of Christian morality. Well, and that's exactly what they've been working towards. In addition to this, in conjunction with this, they have built up a $10 million war chest or whatever in the next fiscal year to fund they're calling it the Global Equality Fund. So they're going to use that, but they're going to use it not only to encourage, but they're going to use it against religious leaders in other countries who speak out against homosexuality and all that, the perverse alphabet soup that's out there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the initial reason it caught my eye is because it can be used and is already, I guess, been suggested to use, preventing foreign religious leaders in other countries who oppose homosexuality and who promote traditional Christian values and traditional Christian families. If they promote those things, then there is at least the push from that whole community on the president to ban them entrance into the United States, to forbid them to come here. which would mean what we were blessed with about 4 years ago now, I guess, by having our primate come visit us. Our primate would not be permitted in the United States. We'll allow, you name it, dictators, murderers, terrorists, everything else. But now the president, because of the gay community, is wanting to ban or forbid Christian leaders, religious leaders from coming into this country. That is, if that's not one of the markers of the degradation of this world, I don't know what else it would be.
I hope the evangelicals for Biden are happy.
What's that?
I hope the evangelicals for Biden are happy.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to, I stand by what I've said over and over again. Because if I go down that road, I'll be far too destructive and I won't be doing what God wants me to do. I cannot let myself get dragged down into the mud of earthly politics, but we have to be aware of all that is going on while we serve the one and only true leader and the one and only true message and movement, which is what God has given us. Just one other little note that I put on here because I found it's not just America that's having these issues. France has now declared that the single greatest problem they have legally are evangelical Christians. And do you want to guess why? Because evangelical Christians dare to think that God's laws are more important than the state's laws. And I'll tell you right now, if you listen, you'll hear that here in this country as well. So, we are in a sad, sad state. And there's no reason for us to get down about it. There's every reason for us to get ready, to be prepared, and to do what Christ has told us to do. Because we know, like we've been studying in Revelation, we know what's coming. We know what the game plan is. We know what our responsibility is. So, look, know it, see it for what it is, be prepared for what it is, but no reason to fear. God is our strength. He is our fortress. He is in control, and we are serving Him, and we are to do His work, and we are blessed with knowing what eternity looks like for us. Okay? All right. Well, Lisa Cruz is not here, but she is the one who asked for this, so you're being inflicted with this slide, or afflicted with this slide, because of Lisa's request. Lisa asked for a timeline of Revelation. Which is not obviously, and this is the calmest of the different timelines I tried to pull down. It's the closest one to being readable. It's also the one I tend to agree with the most, and I'm going to try and make a little bit of sense of it. Where to start? Well, let's start where we start. Okay, you've got your 7 churches, which were the first 3 verses, or first 3 chapters of the Bible, which is essentially out of the timeline, but because it was contemporary to what John was doing at that time in the first century, and also continues through the ages, it fits best here at the beginning of the timeline. Of course, we don't know, I don't think she was asking for this, but we don't know a year, and we can't tell when this is actually going to start. But we do know from this point forward is 7 years. From here to here, this represents 7 years. As we have gone so far, you have the 7 seals, and these are each of the 7 seals, even though I know y'all probably can't read it from back there. And they come to the end with the 7 trumpets, and you have the 7 trumpets here. The 7 seals essentially takes us through 3.5 years, the first half of the 7 years. The reason it's laid out like this is because that first 3.5 years is, as bad as it is, it's very, very mild compared to what the second 3.5, the final 3.5 years will be. And that's where you start with the 7 trumpets here, moving into the 3.5 years, and we're right in here. We're right at the last couple of trumpets. We're actually at the last 3 trumpets, which we'll get into here in a bit. But we've already seen gathering or the marking, the sealing of those, and then all those who have not been marked by God's seal will be the recipients of so many of these curses. Once we get through the trumpets, once we get through these woes, in fact, the final three trumpets that we're going to start looking at tonight are the three woes that we talked about last time, where the eagle, John saw the large eagle flying and crying out, "Woe, woe, woe," to those who are not sealed, who are not the sealed of God. These three are going to deal, those are those three woes that the eagle proclaimed. Time-wise, though, and this is what makes timelines hard, is that really this in here is kind of, you could actually make it kind of an overlapping thing here. It doesn't fit cleanly in a 1, 2, 3 linear timeline. Because we'll move from the trumpets, we'll move to the descriptions of the great actors, the different key elements are individuals, for good and for evil, and throughout the end of time, the dragon, the 10-horned beast, and so forth. And then we kind of get back into a linear progression with back to chapters 15 and 16, where we start having the different bowls of wrath, and then it all comes to a close, well, right in chapter 19 with the Lord's return and the ultimate defeat. Then the timeline really essentially stops, and we have a millennium. We have 1,000 years of peace of Christ ruling here on this earth. And then we have Satan's one last hurrah before everything here passes away, and then we have the new heaven and the new earth. I hope that makes some sense. Did that help at all? And since Lisa's the one who asked for it, I wish she were here to find out if that's what she was kind of. Yeah. So anyway, if anybody wants me to send you this slide, or anybody who wants these slides, I'm more than happy to give you all a copy of them. There's nothing. I don't keep them hidden or anything. Come on, work for me. Dadgummit. Okay, so now we're in the manual. All right, and this was just one other, I thought this might just kind of clarify at least a progression of the book itself. We have gone through, obviously, the letters to the churches, John's entrance into heaven and seeing God's throne, and now we have the seals, the 6 seals, the sealing of the 144,000, which we have seen, and we have moved into we've gone through the first 4 trumpets, I guess, and then you have the 2 trumpets, and we will, I'm sure, see the mighty angel this evening. I think we will, and then we come to the different events that are happening throughout with the tribulation witnesses and their time of preaching and witnessing in Jerusalem. Then the woman with the man-child and the red dragon, the beast, and his goings on. Then Christ's harvest. Then we look again at the particular the vials of wrath, and then an examination of Mystery Babylon. Babylon falls, the marriage supper of the Lamb, Christ's return, Armageddon, the destruction of evil, and then the millennium, and then finally new heaven and new earth. So just kind of an overview there of the progression. Come on, are you going to work for me at all? Nope, you are not going to work. Okay, so we are starting chapter 9. I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong scoop there, Al. Verses 1 through 3. And so can I get someone to please read these 3 verses? Go right ahead, yeah.
And the 5th angel heaven to earth. And he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke from a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth.
Okay, I know that we did start this last week, but I wanted to back up because we're going to spend a little bit more time with the locusts, so I wanted to go back to their origination, to the verses that we looked at, not last week, but last time, however long ago it was that we were doing this. So there was a bit of a discussion that we had with about that. Yeah, okay, there we go. About that angel, we'll talk about that, about the star falling. This is the first woe, the first of the three woes proclaimed by the eagle, and the identity of this angel that is fallen from heaven to earth. I don't think I need to, unless y'all want me to, get into that whole debate again. There's a lot of back and forth as to whether that's a demon fallen to earth because it is fallen to earth, or whether it's just the vision that John sees as this angel dramatically comes down to earth. I am more inclined to believe that it is an angel, because at no other point in Revelation does God give the keys or use a demon to do his work. And what this angel does is he's given the keys and opens the bottomless pit. So I'm inclined to believe that it is. Is it working? Hey, there you go. Oh, thank you. But yeah, I'm inclined to believe that it's actually an angel and not a demon. Even though I know the fallen from heaven and earth, that's the crux of why so many want to say that this is a demonic thing. There's any number of different arguments. Like I said, we talked about this a lot last time. So any questions on this? Anybody need me to go any further in discussing this? Okay. Yeah, and down there at the bottom, there really is not a definitive in this. It's what John sees, and there's not an explanation beyond that. So we were trying to parse that out, and it just kind of is what it is. But the important, different things that are depicted here that are so important is always a reminder. You're going to see this here. We will see this throughout. We're going to see this with the locusts. Is to never lose sight of the fact, the overwhelmingly important fact, that God is in control, that Christ is in command. Even of the devil, even of what's going on, he is in command. The devil thinks he's fighting and winning, when the devil is simply doing and fulfilling the role that he has. So Christ is in control, even in control of the abyss. He can, what he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. So he gives that angel the authority to act under his command. Obviously, a bottomless pit is certainly hell. We've talked about that. Now, the smoke. Couple of reasons why the smoke that rises out of there, which is representative also of the locust, represents the enormous amount, the density of this plague. Okay? Remember, the plagues are going to mirror, they're going to not linearly line up, but they're going to mirror the plagues that were brought upon Egypt, but they're going to be so much more severe. So these locusts are a mirror to, or a parallel to, the locusts that were sent upon Egypt. They're just so much worse. And because of the smoke illustration gives us an idea of the density and the enormity of this cloud of locusts that come out of hell to do this punishing work that they have to do. But it is also consistent with, because we always have to remember how so much, all of the Old Testament, of course, comes together, and Old Testament imagery and everything else ties in so neatly to the Revelation. So smoke is used also to depict the wrath of God. What do you think these locusts are part of? This is all part of the wrath of God. So you see how that all connects. And also from Joel, smoke being this enormity of smoke, designating the day of the Lord. Nope. Okay. Gosh, doggone it. Come on. All right, there we go. So these are, and here's the thing. As we were saying already, Jesus is in control. These locusts are extremely deadly. We'll look at their description in the next few verses. But even though they have all this ability to inflict enormous harm, they're not allowed to kill. They are only allowed to torment. They're only allowed to torment those that don't have the seal of God on their foreheads. So those that are sealed as God's own, the 144, and then the indeterminate number of Gentiles that are saved, they're safe. They're safe from this. They can walk right through the midst of these locusts, and they won't be harmed. These locusts are going to be focusing on those fallen, evil humans that have refused God and have determinedly refused God. So, if we look at Joel, just another description, another reinforcement of this imagery of these locusts coming up out of the pit, that, locusts so dense that the sun and the moon are darkened and the stars no longer shine. You have to realize this is not just like we know locusts, swarms of locusts, and like the locusts that descended on Egypt. These locusts aren't just focusing on one geographic area. These locusts are covering the world. So these locusts are now going to be tormenting the ungodly all around the planet. So think how many that must be. That's why this cloud is so enormous, so dense that as Joel relates, which is a good solid parallel to what John is seeing here, that the sun and the moon are darkened and the stars no longer shine. These are one of the woes, but they are also they're the first. Well, I can't say that. They are one of the more direct and powerful judgments that are directly sent against the ungodly that have denied God. Okay, now let's look at more of a description of these locusts. So somebody please read these 3 verses.
They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them.
This is the punishment of a righteous God being played out. And it's being played out in a particularly scary way. I mean, have any of you ever been stung by a scorpion or seen somebody stung by a scorpion? Not a pleasant thing. I'm blessed. I have been very close to being stung a couple of times, but I have been around a couple of different Marines that got stung by scorpions, and man, it's ugly. It's not nice at all. So you take that from a simple earthly arachnid, ugly little critter. You take that and you magnify it to these things here. And it's actually in the next couple of verses that we're going to get a more detailed description of them. But if their torment is like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone, and magnified, it's horrific. But God is controlling everything, so He's not allowing them. He's not allowing them to act like normal normal locusts. They can't harm the grass, which that's where locusts usually do their damage, is destroying the crops. They're not going to do anything to any of the trees or the grass or crops or anything like that. They are entirely focused on the ungodly, the people who are not marked or sealed as God's own. And they have a set period of time. God's not going to allow this to go, any longer than what he has decided, and according to his perfect will is 5 months, that he can torment them, but they can't, that they can torment them, but they cannot kill. So it'll be so bad that they're going to want to die, but they cannot die. So these judgments here, this one and what you're going to see following, we've already seen the fresh waters turn bitter. We've seen the ocean being affected. We've seen all these different things that have damaged and destroyed the planet, destroyed crops, destroyed the grass, the trees, and so forth. These are now directly focused upon people. These are focused upon the ungodly, the ones who are not saved. So those that do not have the seal of God on their foreheads are now going to be the recipients of these woes. These are all against humanity. And we've already talked, I keep repeating this because it's so important to see the grace of God that as he has, those who were not raptured but have come to faith in him have been sealed now by him. And those are now protected through the worst, as we're genuinely in the great tribulation time now. He is protecting his people that he has sealed. All the way back in chapter 7, verses 3 and 4, when the saints are sealed on their foreheads. That was during that brief, or I don't know, call it brief, in the lull that took place between the 6th and the 7th. Yes?
Is there any indication that men will come to God, will come to Christ during this period of time? I mean, we know that there's some, because they were sealed, but from that point on, do we have any indication that any others?
Not really. And that's a great question. I actually was kind of thinking about that today, because we see this constant repetition in what God is doing, where he limits. He could just erase the whole thing, but he never does that. There's always a limitation. There's always a chance. But I think the sad fact of the matter is that he out of his love and his grace feels like he must, or he does, leave that chance there. But as far as what John witnesses in the Revelation, I think the last that we see turn to him, because we see more and more signs of them being obstinate and refusing God as we go forward in Revelation. So I hate to say it, but I think that God's blessings and his love to give them the opportunity, I think they refuse it. I think probably the ones that we see sealed with the seal of God are the last ones that turn to him. We can hope otherwise, but there's no real indication in the book of that. Okay. Oh, shoot. All right. So, and this is just kind of what I've already said. Oh, and this torment, it is linked, and the next torment, the next curse that's coming is going to be the death of 1/3 of the ungodly people who have been tormented by these locusts. That is the next of the torments to come, and or the next of the curses to come. Which again, it's like we were just saying, he doesn't wipe them all out. There's just a third gets killed, and then there's still the 2/3 remaining. There's always that chance. He's always leaving that door there, but there's unfortunately just not an indication of a response. Okay, now this is 2 slides, so we got 4 verses here. Would somebody please read these 4 verses?
In appearance, the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces. Their hair like women's hair. And their teeth like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron. And the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots with the horses rushing into battle. They have tails and stings like scorpions, and their power to hurt people for 5 months is in their tails. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek his name is Apollyon.
And I'll give you one guess who that is. That is Satan. That is the destroyer. Those actually translate most directly to the destroyer. So they are servants. See how that? Look at how God is in control. He has released the scourge. That's these locusts belong to. Their king is the devil, but God is still in control. God still limits and controls what they're allowed to do, and keeps them from doing anything more or anything that He does not want them to do. It is interesting, though. These are, obviously they're not your average locusts. These things are given. Well, in fact, there's some interesting images out there, but I really wasn't satisfied with any of the pictures I could find because a lot of them look like something out of a bad horror movie or something like that. So I'll leave it to your own imaginations to think about these things. But they sure don't appear to be your average, or even, they don't appear to be like a locust hardly at all. With human faces, the human faces depict more of a cognizance, more of a knowledge. So they understand their orders. They know what they are about. They have an intelligence that the average locust doesn't have. Their intelligence is to focus on and torment these particular people. The fact that they have crowns on their head is illustrative of their control, their victory over those that they're tormenting. The ones that are being tormented may try to kill them, may try to get rid of them, may try to escape the torment, but they can't. These things for 5 months are in control of the torment. That crown represents the power and the authority that they have, the victory that they have during that time frame. Their teeth is representative of the danger that they represent, the fierceness of what they are, and the pain that they can inflict. Breastplates also being representative of their durability, their resistance to man's attempts to get rid of them. And so, in fact, most of the warrior type illustrations here are speaking to the strength that they have to resist or to not be affected by man's attempts to get rid of them. And of course, they have tails, which your average locust does not, and stings like scorpions, and that's where their power to hurt and to torment come from.
Sounds kind of like a super cobra to me.
Huh?
Sounds kind of like a cobra to me. Super cobra. A marine super cobra.
Oh.
Chopper with tails and power to hurt. And
Yeah.
you can see a pilot with a helmet.
That's an interesting. Yeah. Yep. So kind of like what I was saying earlier. I mean, these are bizarre creatures, but they are, combination of locusts and warriors and scorpions, and they're built for a specific purpose. So that's why they look what they are. As I already addressed, the crowns of gold, talking about their victory over their human targets, their cunning and their intelligence being the human faces, and yeah, this was an interesting thing. In fact, I don't think I had this in the class when I taught it a few years ago. I ran across this yesterday, I believe. The 5-month period that they're allowed to torment actually equals locusts have a 5-month lifespan. I don't know how I missed that before, but that's just an interesting. I don't know. It's an interesting element, maybe a detail of how cool God works. He's sending these locusts. They don't really look like locusts, but for that 5-month period of torment, it actually corresponds to the 5-month lifespan of locusts.
Just the sound of that many
Ooh.
locusts would be deafening.
I'm sorry?
Just the sound of that many locusts would be deafening.
Oh, yeah, and with those wings and with all the extra accoutrements and everything, kind of like what Al was describing, you think about it as the sky being blackened with helicopters, the amount of noise.
I mean, if Somebody, if John was back there at that time and saw something like the chopper and a pilot with the mask, it would, and he was trying to describe it in a sound that, I mean, I don't have, it's probably scorpions, but it's just.
No, I know what you're saying. But the problem, of course, being that, I've been around a lot of cobras, a lot of super cobras, and they don't do so good at tormenting. They do better at killing. And I think that's where you have to kind of go, okay, well, it doesn't quite work that way. But no, I can certainly see the comparison. And there has been, you're not the only one. There have been a number. Well, Hal Lindsey did it in some of his stuff, taking some of this imagery and then comparing it or looking at the modern weapons of war and things like that and trying to extrapolate where that might work. There's nothing wrong with that. I just, with the locusts in particular, they're more clearly a biological thing as opposed to a mechanical thing. But no, that's not a bad observation at all. And then, like I said earlier, their boss is Satan. Abaddon translates to destruction. I'm sorry, not destroyer, to destruction, and that is Satan. And he, even though he controls the actions of these awful creatures, they are limited and controlled again by God's rules. They don't get to go off and do what they want to do. Go ahead.
Could they be like little drones?
I'm sorry.
Could they be like little drones?
They could be. It is an interesting thing what technology. How does John's first century understanding translate into 21st century? I don't know. That's actually, I'll be honest with you, that's one of the reasons I'm such a literalist, is that when I start going down these other paths, I get myself confused really quickly. And if I'm not careful, I can get myself drawn away from what the book is saying because I get so intrigued by the different ideas that I may come up with. So my answer to that has always been just to pull back and to stick to the absolute literal as I can to what the book says. Drones and helicopters, just like one of the most intriguing, interesting descriptions, and I think it was during the movie Late Great Planet Earth, Hal Lindsey talks about the Battle of Armageddon and how he corresponds what John sees of the destruction there. He corresponds to an earthly atomic attack on all of these tanks and all of these different things. And it was brilliant. In fact, that was one of the things that has, down the road, drawn me back to being such a literalist, because I got so intrigued with what he described there. I thought, hey, that really makes sense to me. But then the more I kind of peel that onion, and then it starts kind of getting a little off from Jesus being in complete control and being more about, the weapon. Well, and that's one of the curses of being in the military. Weapons are cool. I want to get, into that. But no, it's not, there's nothing wrong with that. Just always remember to hold on to the central message and focus of what God is showing to John and John is telling us. All right, somebody please read these 4 verses here.
The first woe has passed. Behold, 2 woes are still to come. Then the 6th angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar before God, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, Release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. So the 4 angels who had been prepared for the hour, the day, the month, and the year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind.
Okay, so we have, and I guess maybe this is what Lisa was asking for, and I guess I could try to draw this out. We've had 5 months of torment upon those not sealed by God's seal. And at the close of that 5 months, the next trumpet sounds, and when that sounds, then you have, and these 4 angels that are bound, that's an important distinction. These 4 angels are bound at the great river Euphrates. Remember, Euphrates is the eastern boundary of the promised land that God had promised to Abraham. And these 4 angels are bound. So these are not good angels. These are demons. These are the demonic. They have been bound there at the Euphrates as it is a border of sorts. It's an Old Testament border. You know, whether the way it plays out in terms of, because obviously they're going to have more of a global impact here, killing 1/3 of the remaining population. But that is, if you will, the holding area or the prison that they have been bound to until this trumpet sounds. And then they are sent forth. And this is an interesting thing. And there's two different schools of thought on it. I don't think that either one particularly, I don't see either one as having a particularly overwhelming merit over the others. So the 4 angels who have been prepared for the hour, the day, the month, and the year. If you take that, the way I read it is that, you know, again, God's sovereign will, God's sovereign plan. It was that time he had already designated it, and that's when these angels are released. But when you look at, we've talked about before how days and even back to Daniel and how what we see as the month, the day, the year, that corresponds differently. Some people claim, some scholars have worked this out and claim, and I have completely forgotten. I did it for the last class. I meant to today, and I didn't work through it again. But the math-wise, anyway, they claim that it is 13 months. So one of the thoughts, I believe it's 13 months. I think I have it in the notes here. So one of the ways of looking at it as a time period, could dictate. It is possible that it could dictate a time period instead of the date of their release, which would represent, 13 months. Time period during which those 4 angels are allowed, those 4 demons really are allowed to kill 1/3 of the population. Going back to at the outset here, that voice that John hears is Jesus. A couple of important things is that it is a singular voice. It's not some multitude. It's not someone relaying. It is a single commanding voice coming from the altar. So that is Christ in his place of absolute authority, giving that command. And then I did speak already about the 4 angels, that these are fallen angels. Otherwise, there would have been no reason to bind them up, because if they're not fallen, they're obedient to God, and they're just sitting there waiting for God to give them the order. But they were bound up, so these are fallen. The Euphrates River, again, that eastern border to the land promised to Abraham. And then we talked about the time period. I don't have a problem with this, and in fact, if we wanted to draw a straight line time, that would be probably okay. I think, though, the one thing that keeps me from embracing that idea completely is that we're already somewhere around the 4th or the 5th year, somewhere in that span, and there's so much that is going to happen here. I'm not sure that God wants to give 13 months to this. You see what I'm saying? You know, a little over a year out of 7 he's going to give to this. I can't say definitively anyway, but it just doesn't quite seem to fit for me. I think it's more indicative of God's supreme authority and his sovereign rule, and that everything is going to happen exactly according to his sovereign plan. And Jeff, please, before next week, show me how to turn off my transitions here. I actually tried to find it. I couldn't figure it out today. Oh, whoops. Oh, okay. Well, and again, just the exactness of it all, again, showing us that God is in control, the complete, perfect accuracy of his authority and his plan. Let me ask y'all, can you see the slides better? Now, I've gone back through and tried to increase the size of the fonts and everything again. Is that helping any? Okay. All right, well, let's see. Could somebody please read these three verses?
The number of mounted troops were twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number, and this is how I saw the horses in my vision, and those who rode them. They wore breastplates, the color of fire, and of sapphire, and of sulfur. And the heads of the horses were like lions' heads. And the fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths. But by these three plagues, a third of mankind was killed by fire and smoke and sulfur coming out of their mouths.
So this is what the four angels get to, or the four demons get to work with. This is what they're unleashing. And of course, that's, twice 10,000 times 10,000, so 200,000. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. 200 million of these mounted beings, troops, whatever they may be. But it's not even, the troops aren't even the dangerous part. It's the darn horses. Look at these things. Heads like lions, again, speaking to their danger. And to us today, we don't appreciate the danger that lions really pose. I promise you, it was impressed on me when I was in Kenya way back when as a lieutenant that we Westerners kind of have I don't know, we have a zoo-ized idea of lions, and in Kenya though, where people every year a lot of people still get eaten by lions because of them being where they're not supposed to. We forget how absolutely dangerous lions are. In the first century, when John is given this vision and John is relating this really is meant to illustrate how overwhelmingly dangerous these horsemen and these horses are. Because lions used to, and like I said, in Kenya and some places of the world today, they still do kill a lot of humans, and they're extraordinarily dangerous. Now, the colors that are represented here all speak to it speaks to the three plagues that come with these horsemen. Let's see, the fire and the smoke, the sulfur, all of those are what's coming out of the mouths out of the lion's mouths. But then we also we'll find out. I didn't cut that very well. I should have had verses 19 and 20 with us. But we'll also find out there's an added danger to these horses. They have a tail they get you coming and going, basically, either by what's coming out of the head or by what's coming off what the tail is doing. So these are highly lethal creatures. 200 million of these demons in this plague, and fire, smoke, and sulfur. That is it's very descriptive when you think about a volcanic eruption.
Right, that's exactly what I was
So
thinking.
each of these things, what's coming out of their mouths is the equal of, or maybe it's a small version or whatever of a volcanic eruption. That's a pretty horrific thing. So packed down into the size of a horse and multiplied by 200 million. And in these horses, there are the three separate plagues that combine into one thing. So it's all, let's see. Yeah, so, the armor, is there to protect them or keep them from being killed. But here you go. The tricolor scheme, each color represents one of the plagues. So red represents fire, the blue represents the smoke, and the yellow represents the sulfur. As always, the different symbolism, elements of symbolism are important. And, the deadly, all put together, it is that volcanic type of thing, and the danger that they represent is, and that's just out of the heads. We'll get to the tails in a minute, but how dangerous that is. So, these, there you go. That's what I was saying earlier about lions. The lethality of lions is somewhat lost in the West today, but certainly would not have been lost on people in the first few centuries or people in Africa today. And so that's, that gummit. So, and this was something, I think I have to give credit to J. Vernon McGee for this. I pulled this out of, I saw, I think this was what, he wrote this down, and I thought that was such a brilliant observation that, the lions eat the humans, but it's symbolic of humans that are being killed because they've been consumed by their own sinfulness to the point of refusing God. God bless you, Jay Vernon. I hope have y'all ever listened to him? He is fantastic. And if you get, and his commentaries can be a little, some of them can be a little general, but most of his commentaries are fantastic, even today. I just love him, and I love his observations. And he certainly doesn't pull any punches. There's no political correctness in that man. It's a wonderful thing. So anyway, 1/3 of the remaining population. Remember, we've already had swaths of the population have been killed off before this. So it's being whittled down. But again, only 1/3 is being killed off. 1/3 of what's remaining is being killed off here. Okay, and now these three verses, somebody please read them. Good gosh.
For the power of the horses is in their mouths and in their tails. For their tails are like serpents with heads, and by means of them they wound. The rest of mankind who are not killed by these plagues did not repent of the works of their hands, nor give up worshiping demons and idols of gold and silver and bronze and stone and wood, which cannot see or hear or walk. Nor did they repent of their murders or their sorceries or their sexual immorality or their thefts.
So there you have, and that's, Joe, kind of going back to what we were talking about. What I did, I thought it was funny. The horses get you coming and going because all the volcanic coming out of their head, and then they've got these tails like serpents that can strike and harm you. So, okay, it wasn't that funny. But anyway, these things they represent a significant threat. Well, they're so significant they're going to kill off 1/3 of the population. But the true tragedy of this is, again, what we were discussing earlier, that God has continually given respites for large portions of the population to make a turn, to make a change, to repent, to recognize, to embrace Him. And it is such a strong and tragic parallel to the world we live in right now. I point you to, again, how many of the progressive churches, progressive Christians, are so wed to their particular choice of sin that they would rather corrupt and mutate and deny the truth of God so that they can serve and actually worship the idol that they live for, which is their sin, instead of repenting, denying themselves, and turning to the one true God. That, there you have the Episcopal Church. There you have, all of these different entities out there. The Pentecostal Church, Lord, I'm sorry, my Pentecostal brothers and sisters, I didn't mean that. Presbyterian Church, USA. And please do not descend on me, my Pentecostal friends. I apologize wholeheartedly. It just, a lot of the United Methodists, there are whole swaths of the church that have so given themselves over to serving sin and satisfying man's will and man's worship. And let's not paint this or sugarcoat this. Man has turned his own desires, and in too many cases it has to do with sex. Sex has been turned into the sickest idol that is present in this world today. And sexual immorality, which of course Christ has spoken, it is spoken of quite frequently. It's never left off a list of sin. Sexual immorality is always right up there. It's always a huge thing. Because sexual immorality, I believe try to remember the verse, but it represents a disease inside, not the disease outside. So it is even more indicative than some of the other sin of the rottenness, the destruction inside of the human being. And that is where we live today in this world, where all these different varieties of ungodly, absolutely sinful sexual lives and expressions and all of this have become risen, have been elevated to a point of being detestable idols in and of themselves, to the point that that now dominates and is used to change Christianity from a true religion into a false heathen religion that would not have a hard time celebrating back in the old Greek bathhouses or in any of the pagan Greek temples with the various sick and demented sex rites that they did. So when you put it in that context, and I'm not projecting, that's where we live right this moment. So if it's that bad right now, it is not that hard to believe, though, that people are so bent. You know, I've heard, gosh, who was it? I've heard, some different famous people over time. I wish I could remember who it was, because this was really sad. Oh, Freddie Mercury made the comment that I'd rather go to hell because the more interesting people will be there. I think that's a loose quote. It's not a direct, but it's so sad that has become such a prevalent thing. So it's hard to believe, but in the face of even this kind of destruction, this horror, the rest of mankind, those that are not sealed as God's own, they still won't repent. They still will not give up that idol, those idols of sexual immorality. Look at that right there. Of their murders, their sorceries. How many of them do you think are probably worshipers of Satan, worshipers of some false god, Allah, or worshipers of something other than God, and they're not willing to give up that to recognize the one true God?
Murders and abortion.
I'm sorry?
Murders and abortion.
Oh, there you go. That's, and that is something, too, I think that we really need to emphasize in this country and as Christians, in this world as Christians. We need to emphasize the fact that I think even we get misled in the way we present it, and sometimes even the way we perceive it. As horrific as abortion is, abortion needs to be seen and embraced as what it is, which is murder. Abortion is murder. In a literal translation of the Ten Commandments, it is, "Thou shalt not do murder." Abortion is murder. And it's one of the most heinous kinds of murder you can even imagine, because it's murder upon an absolutely innocent being. A helpless, innocent child is murdered. And I don't mean to equivocate. And God knows He and I have wrestled with this for, my time in the Marine Corps and everything else. I'm not trying to equivocate, but I am saying that at least sometimes when humans are forced to kill other humans or kill other humans, there might be some things that are not so heinous about it. I can't. Any way I say this is going to sound bad. It's going to sound very equivocal. I won't. I'm sorry.
Would it be like saying, I'm killing this person in front of me, not because I hate them, but because I love the people standing behind me?
Yes, ma'am. My only problem with the way I was trying to go with that is that I do believe that, there is killing that is not murder, that is not prohibited by the Ten Commandments, and killing to defend, killing to protect. There is killing like that that's why I stand so strongly on the literal translation of the Ten Commandments, that thou shalt not do murder, as opposed to when you say thou shalt not kill. Well, oh my goodness, that makes some really boggy ground. Yeah.
Well, murder there means the taking of an innocent life.
Yes. Yeah, and so that is again, that is the thing that's the thing that is so disturbing about how abortion is addressed today. because of the word abortion, and because it has been, it's such an echo chamber, and it's been said over and over and over and over again, even those of us who are opposed to it, I catch myself sometimes, as mad as I get about abortion, how awful it is, I catch myself sometimes, and I say this because my best friend and I were talking about this last night, that abortion is murder. It is the most heinous kind of murder. I think of, and I don't know if I'm even communicating, I don't know if I'm putting this together right, but we need to see that humanity needs to see, and Christians need to engage it properly, that abortion is that much worse. It is that bad. It's not just, okay, it's another sin. Oh, that's kind of where I'm trying to go. It's not just this attitude that, it's just another sin. And no. There's a reason why God cursed Baal worship and the sacrifice of infants. What we have done in this nation since 1972, I think, is worse than what Israel did when it fell into Baal worship and sacrificed babies. And there's no difference. In fact, it's just as horrific, or maybe more horrific, than the burning of babies in the arms of the idol. Well, if you've ever read a description of what they do to a baby in the womb, is at least as awful as that. And we're far too quiet about this. And we're far too I don't want to say that we're not allowing, we're not accepting, but I think sometimes we tend to want to equivocate it. I don't think we want to see it for the absolute, the apocalyptically bad, the apocalyptically horrific thing that abortion is. Thank you for throwing that soapbox out there for me on this, or whichever one of you did that. Because that should be an absolute cornerstone. I as much as the Roman Catholic Church, well, not so much the church, the Pope aggravates the daylights out of me, and he's off his rocker. And yes, for my Roman Catholic friends, my best friend is Roman Catholic, by the way, the Pope is a lunatic. I will say that and proclaim that. He is, and he's not very godly in many of the things that he does, which puts the lie to your idea of an infallible pope. Doesn't work. But the one thing they really have right is that they're all in complete attack upon and resistance against abortion. And we need to be, how horrific is it that there was a bishop in the Episcopal Church who prayed a blessing over an abortion clinic and then preached a sermon that abortion was a blessing from God? There's a special corner in hell for something like that. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. I could ramble forever on this, and I don't throw something at me when I'm going too long, okay? And I have gone too long. I'm over the time anyway. What we will do is we will pick up here next week. There's just a few things that we'll rattle through about this, and then we'll get to the final woe. And where things are starting to really gather speed, and it's about to get very, very interesting anyway, because with the introduction of some of the key players that other than Jesus himself, some of the key players that are going to be present throughout the remainder of this tribulation. But we will come back. We will. Let me. How do I? No, doggone it, we'll be here next Wednesday night. I say that, y'all have to know. When it comes to snow and winter weather, I am really about a 10-year-old little boy inside. So I am currently I'm just spinning because the latest forecast on the Weather Channel looks like we're going to get a fair amount of snow maybe Sunday night and Monday. And so I'll be that dad. I mean, Zoe and I will be building snowmen, and I'll be running around like a madman out in the snow. But we will be here. Even if the snow is still on the ground, I will be here. We will do this. We'll pick back up here next Wednesday night. So, any questions? And I'm sorry, please, criticism, if I got off base, if I went too long, if I rant too much, please tell me. Let me know. Yes?
Next week is Ash Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, we won't be here next week. I'm sorry. Ash Wednesday, yeah, that does kind of trump this. Man, that could be interesting, Ash Wednesday with snow. All right, well, I hate to do that, but no, we'll have 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We'll be back here in Revelation.
If this is typically Dallas snow, you're gonna be making snow babies, not snow babies.
I had, when I was growing up, there were 2 really, really good snowfalls. This is how rare it is that I remember growing up in Shreveport. And when I was in 6th grade and then when I was in 9th grade. And we had other little small snowfalls from time to time, but one of those was about 6 inches and the other was about 10 inches or so. And we made some serious snowmen out of that 10-inch snowfall. And the thing that always stuck with me, even back then, was watching the Shreveport weather, and they talked about, oh, Dallas got so much more than Shreveport got. So doggone it all, I'm hoping that maybe it'll be, maybe we'll see 10 or 12 inches, which will let us really make what I'm going to make a snow Zoe is what we're going to make. So, okay. Is everything making sense? Is this working? Okay.
Glad to be back.
I'm glad to be back. Glad to have you all back. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for everyone who joined us online. Any questions from online or anything? I bored them or they all turned it off when I started ranting. Okay. Would someone please close us in prayer?
Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to get back together in fellowship in this place. Gathering together is so important. I ask your protection upon each of us as we head home and for whatever work needs to be done tomorrow, that you would protect us from any harm. We rejoice, Lord God, and looking forward to next Sunday, once again in restoring fellowship and enjoying each other along with receiving the word. Ask your blessings upon our priest, upon this place, and upon these families. In the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here, because Jeff and I were actually a little worried about 15 minutes before going, I'm going to be standing here talking to the cameras again. So I love you guys. Y'all don't know how happy I am to see y'all. I'm so happy to be back in person. And if y'all, did everybody get the CTR news? Okay, good. So you know that we're rolling things back. We come in and look, the next step as soon as we can get there is to try to reel the communion back to maybe even do an intinction or something like that down. I hope in maybe during Lent, but anyway, hey, praise God, we're back to pre-December breakout levels, and we're going to keep surging on.